All right, in three, two, one. Welcome everyone to I'm not sure what we're gonna call this series. I guess we'll call it over unders just before we can find something maybe a little bit more concise. But over unders is pretty much what me and Matt are going to be going through all six MLB divisions and talking about the over unders, giving our analysis and going into detail of all six MLB divisions for the upcoming 2025 MLB season. Got Matt here today with me. Matt, how we doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Baseball's finally here. It's around the corner. I know spring training isn't like it's one of those things where it's like you just want you're craving to have some baseball back, but then like, as the weeks go by, I for me personally, at least it's just like, all right, now just get me to opening day. Like, but it's good to see baseball back on the TV. Good to, see some guys hitting, guys pitching. But for the most part, I'm at the point now where I'm like, all right, just get me to opening day, everyone healthy. Uh, don't want any crazy injuries. I know we'll be talking about injuries throughout this, but don't like just get to opening day healthy for all 30 teams, not just one or two in particular. But no, man, it's good to have baseball finally back.
Yeah, very true. For me, it's the best time of the year is when baseball season's in full swing. The days start getting a little bit longer, and the days start getting a little bit warmer too. So, just nothing like the feeling that baseball brings to me. So let's just get right into it. We're going to be doing the American League East today. Obviously, the American League East, we're a little bit biased, respectively, from obviously, if you guys have been a part of the channel a long time, you would know Matt Hannafan is a Yankee fan and I am a Red Sox fan. And you would think we wouldn't be comrades in arms as much as we are, but you know what? It just works. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's go. Let's start with let's go with the bottom of the barrel and trying to put it politely, because obviously throughout the offseason, the American League East. Uh, had some big acquisitions as well as some teams didn't do so hot, of course, but you can say that about a lot of teams throughout the MLB season or MLB offseason, I should say. But let's start with Toronto. So Toronto slated in at 78 and a half wins. Matt, we already know Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wasn't able to get an extension done with Toronto. They did bring in Anthony Santander, and as well as a lot of key pieces could be on the move, whether it's at this point during the or sometime during the year or going into the next offseason with Bo Bichette and Vladdy, like I mentioned before, among others. So give me your opinion on the uh Toronto Blue Jays.
I think this could potentially be the worst team in the American League. I mean, we're starting from the bottom of the barrel, so that's not like a crazy hot take, but I am not high on this team at all. Um, I think when you just start to look at things like, okay, just outside of Vladdy, outside of Bichette, who had, an injury plagued season last year, George Springer's 35. Like, I don't think many people like take that into account. And I think he's been on the decline for, each of the last few seasons. And then you look at the rotation, like they got Max Scherzer in the offseason. Max Scherzer, I don't know how old he's like what 65 years like he has also been someone who's been, on and off the diamond for the last couple of years. I know he's looked good in spring so far, but I still want to see it for a prolonged stretch in the regular season at someone who's, 41 years old or 40 years old, however old he is. Then you
Pushing 41 in July,
Yeah,
just
and so then you look
exact.
at the rest of the rotation, like Kevin Gossman hasn't been good. Jose Barrios is okay. Like Chris Bassett's a serviceable arm, but like he's not going to be someone that I want to rely upon to get the bulk of my innings. Or not bulk of my innings, but like the bulk of my production. Like Bowden Francis, who was a guy who was highly touted in the minors as a starting pitcher, came up, was a reliever for a couple of years, and now he's going to be, the back end of the rotation again. And then like Jeff Hoffman, I thought he was really good with Philadelphia last year. He's like a fine addition to the back of that bullpen as someone who can be like a closer. Chad Green's okay. Their bullpen's okay, but like it just feels like to me, obviously Vladdy's awesome. Obviously Bichette when he's on the field is awesome. But outside of that, it's like they don't really have many impact bats. On like they got Andres Jimenez in the offseason. He's not really someone who's like an impact bat. He's more so just a guy who is an excellent defensive second baseman. At least that's how I regard him as. like they just I'm again looking at like Varsho's okay, maybe. Like I'm not super high on Santander being the guy who's going to replicate the production that he had last year. Um, you know, where he was one of the better offensive bats as a DH and or not DH, but at better offensive bats in the AL East last year with Baltimore. I'm just not super high that he's going to replicate that production again this year. Like I don't know. I don't really like the the construct of this team. It just feels like a lot of older guys who you're trying to rely upon, like Gosman, like Bassett, like Scherzer, outside of just Vladdy and Bichette, who for a while they were like two of the most highly touted prospects in the league. Um, and then obviously like they've lived up to it, but they really haven't been able to produce outside of it. Like they got Springer, however many years ago. Springer was awesome, but he's been on the decline. Santander was one of the few free agents that actually took their money because like Toronto's been a team that's been just trying to throw out money to anyone over the last several years, and they haven't gotten anyone. Uh, Again, Alejandro Kirk, if he can return back to where he was, I think it was 23 or 22, where he had like that explosive offensive season.
I believe it was 22.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this could be a team that's just selling off pieces at the deadline. Like I think
That's
that's what it's going to come down to. I don't think this team's going to be anywhere near contention. I don't think necessarily that's going to be Vladdy. Maybe it is. But I don't know what else they have that really excites me from like okay, we got that guy. Like maybe Looper Fido, who they got last year at the deadline from Houston. Like sure, maybe there's something like legitimately there, but um I don't know. I don't see the rest of it.
I look at Toronto, and obviously I've been on record the last few weeks talking about Vladdy's situation, talking about the Blue Jays and Santander's acquisition. Um, I think it's more they have a lot of guys that they probably would have sold off if they just weren't playing so bad. Like a lot of these guys that they brought in over the last few years, like Springer, Gosman, Bassett, a lot of these guys, obviously they were getting older, but their value was so low. I don't think any team really would have wanted to,
Yeah.
send any assets out.
Right.
And that not to say that these guys can't have some sort of resurgence season and then they just end up getting moved anyway. But so like Springer, for example, like he last year, I think he was barely a 2020 player, even though there was years before that where he was easily passing that mark, even as early as like 2 seasons ago. So for him, obviously, they knew what they were getting when they signed him to that deal in before the 2021 season. So
Yeah.
you were signing him to go into his mid 30s. So I would look at him more if he's, and obviously baseball's a lot different from sports like the NBA and whatnot. So you can still be like 35, 36 years old and still have at least a couple of good seasons left in you to be productive. And I like Springer. I still think he's gonna still be a productive bat. I just think like his ceiling would be he has himself a great first half and then he gets traded. You can say that about a lot of these other guys, maybe outside of Barrios. On the pitching side, especially last year, the bullpen for not Baltimore for Toronto was more or less horrendous. Like Jordan Romano, you did
Romano
not.
was awful.
I think he led the league in blown saves, or I think the Blue Jays as a team for the entire year led the league in blown saves and blown save opportunities. Um, and yeah, everybody outside of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just really just regressed.
Yeah.
Obviously, someone like Varsho, he's tremendous defensive outfielder, won the Gold Glove, I believe, for center field, which is always bizarre. He came up as a catcher and then he went to left field and then became a great center fielder. So he was just all over the place. But it's just the thing is great. It's kind of like the same thing with Jimenez coming from Cleveland. It's like these guys have tremendous defensive abilities, but then the bat sometimes is kind of off and on. Like Varsho, he can put up decent counting stats, but then like you look at the slash line and it's like more or less doesn't look it's very hot. But yeah, so like the main thing I'm looking for with Toronto because I'm seeing the over under and kind of like the answer the base question. Like I think they don't reach 79 wins. I think there's just gonna be too many rough patches where there's gonna be a point where they're gonna either try to sell guys off or maybe just pretty much it's kind of like an auditioning phase because I guess you kind of see what you have with Vladdy because if I'm Toronto, and I'm not convinced I can sign him to stick around long term to kind of see the long term plan. I would look to obviously trade him,
Yeah.
whether it's to in division or whatever. You want to get as much as you can for someone like that, especially while he's still not. He's going to be entering his prime this time next year anyway. So might as well get something for him. Bo Bichette,
Yeah.
you're going to be really intrigued to see if he can have some sort of bounce back because if you're at the bottom of the barrel, like we're assuming they're going to be, then you want to try to sell off a lot of these pieces to just start anew because I don't think their future looks very hot, and I think that's why a lot of free agents outside of the financial commitments didn't bother going there, like Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, among others. So Santander was there because obviously, to your point, like he was really just cashing in, and pretty much
Yeah.
he'd be playing a prominent role. And I think Toronto he can still like at base level, Santander is a very, very good power threat, if nothing else, because I would much rather him DH. But again, you're going to have protection for Vladdy, and he was fantastic with little to no protection last year. So um, it's just more of a matter of fact. And for all we know, Santander could get traded in a year or two anyway into that contract. So it's just a matter. It looks bleak for Toronto. I'll say that.
Santander maybe like again you speak to the power he had what 44 home runs last year. He's been around what 30 to 35 3 of the
Last couple
previous
of
4
seasons for
years
sure.
like or here I just pulled it up. So yeah, 44 home runs last year, 102 RBIs, 28 homers, 95 RBIs in 23. 33 home runs, 89 RBIs in 2022 and that was his best season up to that point. Um he's been around like if you're just looking at like weighted runs created plus and OPS plus like 20 to 30% above league average over that span. And for someone who's not a very good like he's not a good defender at all. Like that's like I think the big worry. Like you may be able if a team has like an open DH slot, like obviously it's easier nowadays than it used to be just because the NL's now you can now DH in the NL.
Right.
Like maybe you're able to get something there. I don't know. Like it's kind of funny. I'm on Fangraphs right now, and they actually have Santander as the projected left fielder with Varsho DHing. Like you mentioned how good Varsho was defensively, and I don't think that would make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe there's something there that I'm missing that's perfectly on the table. But to me, I would rather have Santander DHing and Varsho on the field somewhere. To your point too.
Oh yeah.
Um, but like maybe you'll be able to get something like Bo has been someone who's been around like a 290 to 300 bat with above average OPS and it's really good power for someone who's a shortstop up until last year when he was hurt. And so I think he will bounce back, but it's just like again, there's just not many impact bats. I don't think there's many impact arms in that rotation. Again, like if you look at the numbers and like the the peripherals for someone like Kevin Gosman over the last couple years. Like it's been like very very bad. Like again, Bassett's a serviceable arm, but again, I for someone who may actually be the best arm in that rotation, that doesn't make me feel confident at all. Um, Barrios at this stage of his career, I feel like it's been a disappointing tenure for him in Toronto. Like he remember he got traded from Minnesota and he was expected to come in and be the guy. And that just hasn't been the case over his time for whatever reason. And not that he's a bad pitcher, it's just that like there's no ace in this rotation. Or there's not even a guy who's close to an ace in this rotation. All due respect to Max Scherzer, who is that's just not who he is anymore. Same thing with Gosman, same thing with all these other guys. And so that's where it's just like I don't the sum of these parts isn't good. There's a reason why they're projected over under 78 and a half. And I think given how I think this team will be, I just think it's an under for all the reasons that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I feel like this is probably like the easiest one to decide on because it seems like there's too much turmoil for Toronto. I feel like it's a little too volatile to try to be optimistic. it, to kind of put it in, I don't know if you saw Bo Bichette's spring training photos with his haircut, and he just does not look. He doesn't look the same, and it's kind of like the same thing about like you can say the same thing about these Toronto Blue Jays. A
Yeah.
couple years ago, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. said one of these upcoming seasons was about to be a movie, and I didn't realize it was going to be a horror movie a couple years later. So, with the main plot is Vladdy going to stay or is Vladdy going to go, and I'm reaching toward he's probably going to go. So
He's out of there. He's
he's
so
out of there,
to me, he feels so far out of there. Like it, people would say 1 foot out the door. He's like he has 1 foot out, but he's like
and he's
making that
looking both
step.
ways to make sure it's safe. You
Yeah,
know.
making sure it like I never thought he was gonna sign that extension in the first place, and I still don't think that's the case now. Like I think it's even further from the case now. Like I don't think. And if he doesn't sign that extension and he leaves and they get nothing in return, I don't
It's
know
not look.
what they're
It's not
gonna do.
looking good.
They got to
How
rebuild it some. I don't know.
did you see the report of what he was reportedly pitching to the Blue Jays? It was like 15 years, $600 million.
Yeah. To
And
me, in my head, I thought it would have been like 12 years 450 or 12 years 480 or something like that, which is around the same AAV as 15 for 600. And it makes sense that he wants the longer term security now that Soto. They're almost the same age. I think Vladdy's just a little bit younger um, than Juan is, and so like he would have they would have entered free agency around the same age, and so like I understand him wanting the 15 years. I know he's not Soto. Um, Soto's around like his career, like the average of his career is like Vladdy's two best seasons. Like that's how good Soto is. Um, so and but Vladdy's still like one of the best young hitters in the league, and he's gonna play the most of his rest of his career as a DH, and so it makes sense that like okay, what was Soto's AAV like 50 mil
sounds about right.
somewhere around there, like 40 mil for 15 years, I think makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I would
so
say to answer
yeah,
your question or just to confirm, so Soto just turned 26 in October. So he's going in obviously this will be his age 26 season.
yeah. Vladdy's
And
gonna be 26 soon, right?
Vladdy's going to be 26 on the it's this month on the 16th he's going to be 26.
Okay, right. So yeah, it's 6 months, 7 months younger.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, or 5 months, but like still, um, uh, I get that makes sense from Vladdy's perspective that like that would be the asking price. But in my case, I wonder what Toronto's was like.
Far less you would think, especially if they
Well,
couldn't get it done.
right, but like considering
You know,
they've offered like $700 billion to all these other free agents, but yet they can't do it for Vladdy. I don't know.
I mean, makes you
Doesn't
wonder.
doesn't make much logical sense if that's the case.
Yeah, that's the main thing with Toronto. So just like, pretty much it's like just to put it in short and to wrap it up is that see we can get out of the vets and the guys that you've had locked in for the last few years and probably be sellers off at the deadline. Will that include Bichette and Guerrero Jr.? That remains to be seen. We'll check back in July,
Yeah,
August, and we'll touch base. But yeah, we both agree that the Blue Jays are under 78.5 wins this year, being
yeah,
dead last in the American League East. So let's take a trip down south from Toronto, Canada to Tampa Bay. I would say St. Petersburg, but obviously the Rays are going to be playing in the Yankees minor league ballpark this year. And I believe the Rays are slated to have an over under of 81.5 wins. Yes. So obviously the Rays, that was kind of like the big talking point of their offseason. Not really any big acquisitions, I guess I would say. They
yeah,
signed like kind of like some projects like Eloy Jimenez and others. And yeah,
yeah,
playing in the Yankees minor league ballpark and kind of being in a bit of a loop, obviously trading players like Randy Arozarena and guys last year, obviously Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau. And obviously they still have some of their regular players, but obviously I just don't think Tampa Bay is the scary team that we looked at them to be even a few short years ago. But Matt, what are your feelings on Tampa Bay going into the season?
this is a tough projection for me because if I can recall correctly, they were so hurt last year, like everywhere. Like It's also very interesting because if you give like Brandon Lau isn't far removed from being like having like one of the better hitting seasons among second basemen. Like it was like 2022 or 2021. Like in recent years, like he was. I don't remember exactly what the stat line was, but it was really good. But he's just been hurt. Um, he only had not as much as, or it was more than I thought. 425 plate appearances last year for 123 weighted runs created plus. Um, I like Yandy a lot. I know again he's a little bit older, but he's been someone who's just like a model of consistency in just in terms of his production. I know he struggled a little bit last year, but I think he found his groove toward the end of the season, if I can remember correctly. Josh Lau's fine. Christopher Morel, that was like a very interesting trade deadline ad that they had after they traded Paredes. And I don't think that worked out in their favor, but heck, Paredes isn't even in Chicago anymore. So maybe you, depending on how you look at things, that does work
Yeah.
out. They have again, it's not a lot of name recognition on this roster just from like a casual fan perspective, but like Aranda's fine. Morel's fine. Danny Jansen's been someone who's bounced around. Josh Lowe is okay. Junior Caminario is okay. Like they get Shane McClanahan back, who was one of the better left-handed starters in the American League a few years ago. Taj Bradley struggled. I've been a little bit disappointed with him. Um, Pepio, Littell, Shane Baz, who I think is who could break out this year. Um, it'll be very interesting for all of those guys because, like, especially in Pepio's case, fly ball pitcher pitching now at the Yankee Stadium minor league ballpark, which is the exact same dimensions as the Yankee Stadium itself. And so that's going to be interesting just to see how like he, Taj Bradley, Shane Baz, like how they all adjust to that because it's different than uh obviously different than pitching in the Trop for better or worse. The Trop stinks, so probably for better. Uh, I think Pete Fairbanks was someone who I think wasn't he also like banged up a little bit last year.
Yeah, I
Again,
believe
this
so.
is like faulty memory for me. I should probably have better memory, but
Yeah.
um, there's going to be some guy in this bullpen or multiple guys in this bullpen who just break out who you've never heard of in your life. That's something that's inevitable for the Tampa Bay Rays, but um, so like in terms of projecting their over under, I think 81 and a half. Like, if you told me it was like if they won 81 games, be fine. Like that makes sense. Or if you told me they'd win 83 games, like I don't think this isn't. I don't think this is a team that if they go under, it'll be much under. Or if they go over, it'll be much over. Like 81 and a half feels kind of like the perfect projection. Or was it 80 and a half? My
It was 81 and a half.
81 and a half. Yeah, I'll say I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I'll say 82. They win 80. They go 82 and 80. Like that to me feels fine. I don't know what they would do at the deadline because they're a team that like if they pick up the phone and they call you as an opposing front office and they're like, "Hey, I want player X." You're like, "Wait, what does player X have that I am missing that the Tampa Bay Rays of all organizations want?" Because they find a way to get whatever they want out of, especially when it comes to pitchers, more or less. But like, what are they seeing in this guy that makes them want him? We have to figure this out. Like that's kind of like the team that they are. If you're trying to if you trade with the Toronto Blue Jays or not Toronto Blue Jays, Tampa Bay Rays, like that's just how they always been. They're always the feisty little team that they don't pay players, but they're going to find a way to still win 85 games, whether you like it or not. Um, that's just who they've always been. So I'll say slide over. I'll give them the
Yeah,
benefit of the doubt for once.
that's fair. And it's funny they say that the organization that doesn't pay players because the one player they do pay, they can't play anymore. So, you know,
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm just gonna leave it
For
at
some
that. You
dad
guys,
guy stuff. Yeah.
how elite is that ball knowledge? I don't think you got to be that elite to know that, but
I
you know,
forgot about that guy.
yeah. Oh, well, okay, but with the Rays, I'm going to talk about their ballpark first. Obviously, to your point, with the same dimensions as Yankee Stadium, I wonder if it's going to have some sort of effect for a lot of these guys' stats. Might be a slight inflation, maybe for like it could be a blessing and a curse. It's kind of like people on like
Yeah,
MLB the Show, for instance. People love playing on created stadiums with max elevation, so you're playing in a little league stadium on Coors elevation, so
yeah.
so even a pop fly would go 500 feet, something like that. But more or less, I think the Rays, how they're currently constructed, can use any and all the help they can get. I don't think like on paper, and they do this all the time. On paper, you're like, this team should blow, but then you watch them play, and you're like, okay, that makes sense. They get the most out of some of these guys. Like,
They're scrappy.
yeah, you see the Rays even a few years ago, like yeah, like Brendan Lau, he hit 39 home runs in the 2021 season, and it's like he's one of the best second basemen in the game. And obviously, he was hurt over the course of the last few years. Obviously, I think this was the most productive he was this past season. He had like 21 home runs, and he was still hurt for a majority of the year. But Yandy Diaz, all star, I think 2 years ago. And just like they just found players that like were just scuffling in other organizations and bring them in, and then they turn into a pretty solid ball player. And then the crazy thing is sometimes that they'll trade those guys, and then they'll go kind of back to obscurity in some cases. But yeah, so like I think it's such a coin flip. I think they're the biggest coin flip out of all the teams we're going to mention in the American League East. But yeah, like McClanahan, I'm anticipating him. You got to have to be a little bit patient with him because obviously he was out for the all of last season, the majority of the season before with the Tommy John surgery and all that. So you're not sure how long it's going to be for him to kind of get back to where he was. Shane Boz, to your point, is somebody to definitely look out for. And then yeah, just keep an eye out some of these moves that they made. Like Eloy Jimenez was a premier bat for the White Sox a couple years ago, and then started kind of obviously calling kind of falling out with Baltimore as well as Chicago, and maybe playing in that minor league stadium. And for the Rays, and when the Rays get their hands on him, he becomes a productive bat once again. Um, so yeah, like it's gonna be. I would say that's the those trap games that like we mentioned a lot in the NBA. Like whenever you're facing Tampa Bay, if that team's healthy, then that's something to kind of look out for. But I've really never been afraid of the Rays in terms of no matter how good they've been the last couple of seasons. It's just more they're a model of consistency. They stick by their guns, and it works. It's proven. So it's kind of hard to kind of battle their mindset and their mentality when it comes to player development and how they go about talent. So it's real. I would give I can't be as optimistic for them, so I'll take the under, but I do believe they're still a better team than the Blue Jays. And obviously it was just more injuries that were kind of a lot more injuries and less regression. So it's just more getting a more consistent product for them on the field, and then kind of just seeing where it goes. But again, like to your point, I could see them being like the third best team in the American League East if all bolds well. But again, it's kind of hard to kind of put them any higher than that. With obviously after talking about the Rays, we got like the big dogs of the AL East coming up next. But yeah, so it's going to be real interesting to see how the Rays turn out this season. But yeah, can't like it's people just chalk it up to voodoo magic. So um, it's real interesting for Tampa Bay for sure.
100%. 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I would say you got anything else you want to mention on the Rays? I think it's pretty cut and dry when you think about it. It's like
Yeah.
the main talking point for them was really the stadium change. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Well, I guess we'll see with Tampa Bay. But okay, but now moving on, we'll get to like I said, the big dogs of the American League East. Let's start with Baltimore, who is or not Baltimore, sorry, Boston, because I'm going in order from win total. Boston. Boston is labeled at 86 and a half wins. I think besides the Yankees in this division, they were the most active throughout the offseason. So Matt, obviously being a Yankee fan, probably I don't know how excited you are to hear about the Red Sox being very active as much as your Yankees over the course of the offseason. But um, obviously I've kind of said a lot of my piece on the Red Sox, so I'll let you take the lead on this one, my friend.
I think on one hand, it's cool that both them and New York are somewhat good again at the same time.
100%
Like
agree.
the rivalry is kind of back. However you feel about New York, we'll get to them. Um, but on the other hand, I don't like it when the Red Sox are good. So, or at least like given the state of the Yankees and given the state of the like they're two it feels like to me they're on two opposite sides of the pendulum to an extent
Okay.
among the big dogs. Um I think this team's going to win the AL East. Uh I think I just think Boston's the best team. I think their pitching staff's better. I think a part of that will be based on how guys like Walker Bueller and Garrett Whitlock are in the rotation, how healthy Giolito is. Um, Obviously Liam Hendricks, who I think missed last year because of Tommy John. He's at the back end of their bullpen with Chapman, who I don't really know
A
why
Yankee
they signed
legend.
Aroldis Chapman, but he still somewhat throws gas, so that's cool. Um, but I think their pitching is a lot better. Crochet is so gross. Like it actually makes me sick to my stomach that he's a member of the Boston Red Sox because he's so good. The thing that I worry about with him though is Chicago significantly limited his innings in the second half of last season. And so like when you get to August, how will he be? When you get to September, how will he be? Because it doesn't feel like there's going to be any restrictions. He might be fine. Like there might not be much of a drop off, if any drop off at all. But to me, he's like a true ace level player. And then you just add in the fact that they got Alex Bregman, who I was someone hand up at the beginning of the offseason, just from a Yankees perspective. Like, if you're giving him like 6 or 7 years, I'm out. Like, I don't want to do that. But for what was it, 3 years, 120, I think that was the deal.
With
Opt
multiple
out after
options.
each year. So essentially, he's still kind of playing on a 1 year contract, even though I don't actually think he's going to opt out. Like, he's a perfect addition to that locker room that needed a leader. No disrespect to Rafael Devers, but he's not that guy. Um, no disrespect to like Tristan Costas, who sometimes just won't shut the hell up, but he's also not that guy. But like this team is a very good team. Like up and down that lineup, outside of like Rafael, that there's a lot of like solid hitters. Jaron Duran was awesome last year. And I thought he was awesome both offensively and in the field. Devers is obviously one of the best, if not the best, third baseman in baseball. Costas, who was banked up last year, we saw what he could do in the second half of 2023. Um, and then you just add in the fact that like Roman Anthony's right around the corner. Christian Campbell, who I know he's struggled in spring. I don't know if he's going to make opening day, right? He may. I think it would benefit them if he did, but he's also right around the corner. He ascended up their prospect rankings last year. Like those two guys in and of itself, not even talking about Marcelo Meyer, like they have the best young crop of players in the league, probably, and or at least guys who are like on the up and up who aren't actually up yet. Um, and when you just factor in again, like Casas is still there, Devers, Bregman, Duran. I know Yoshida's still there. I was higher on that. I think I'm a little bit wrong in retrospect, just considering he can't play in the field. But if he plays DH for an extended period of time, I'm interested to see how that goes. But I think this team's going to win the AL East. I just genuinely think they're the most complete team in the American League. I think with Bregman in that clubhouse, they're going to be hungry to win. Um, I just think they're the best team. Like Bregman's addition kind of it's obviously different circumstances, but it reminds me when they brought in JD uh before 18.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
That is.
Like it just like you have that established bat. And obviously Bregman's a much better defender than JD was, but like you have that bat in the middle of
Yeah.
the order. You have that that kind of guy in the clubhouse who you guys I mean, obviously Mookie was there at the time, so it's a little bit different, but like guys that you can rally around, like the leaders and this, that, and the other. Like it kind of reminds me of that, even though I know it was at different points in the offseason. I know Bregman, I think it was I want to say JD's was like he signed pretty early. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it was actually he signed a little bit later because
Was it?
It was I forgot what disputes were there. I think it was because it came down to I believe the Red Sox and the Diamondbacks, obviously because he got traded to the
Yeah,
Diamondbacks for the Tigers. It was around honestly. I think it was around this time, like just before spring training opened up, and he ended up signing. I think it was the amount of years they wanted to sign him for.
yeah. It,
Um,
it to me, it just feels like that kind of an impact, like of what he'll have in that clubhouse is more so what I'm trying to say. Like
yeah,
I'm very high. It's gonna be so annoying how many dumb doubles he's gonna dink off that Fenway Park green monster, which is like 5 feet from home plate. Like that's gonna be infuriating watching him do that 60 times a year. But I think it'll be something that like I think Boston's gonna love him. I think he's gonna love Boston. Um, no, I really like just the construct of this team, especially when you factor in what they have coming up, the pitching. Assuming all of those guys are going to stay healthy. Uh, yeah, I think this team is going to win the AL East.
that's probably the biggest hot take I've heard from you going into the season. Um, and I don't hate it. And the reason I'm saying hot take is just because the juxtaposition, asking a Yankee fan, the Red Sox are going to win the division.
I'm
Um,
honest.
yeah,
I'm
yeah, and that
honest.
nobody can take that away from you, and that's what I love about you. And it's funny because amidst of all the moves, and it feels like I've just been talking about the Red Sox all off season, for the channel and everything. So, if you guys haven't seen the Red Sox video I made the other day, please be sure to go check that out. But yeah, to try not to kind of step on my own toes, but it was funny. Like amidst everything, I didn't ask myself, do I think the Red Sox are good enough to win the division? And kind of just thinking about over the course of the offseason, the course of talking about them so much, it was more like building my case and working myself into it because it's like last year, nobody like it's just crazy how the two seasons like night and day in terms of off seasons last year. But last season, Red Sox didn't really do all that much in terms of bringing people in, even though they said they were going to, and the fans got fed up. But that didn't stop the on the field product from from being fun to watch, at least for the first half of the year. The second half is a completely different story. Pitching just fell off a cliff, and they're one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball. Um, and this year it feels different now because you had guys like Tanner Houck, guys like Jaron Duran, Cedar Rafaela. They seems like they're gonna have him play center field majority of the time, which I love that for him, and I think he'll play best out there. And moving Duran to left field just to make the outfield a lot more athletic. um, Yoshida still being on the team, even though I love Yoshida, I just think he's that piece in particular just does not fit. The Red Sox still feels kind of weird, especially like having a slap hitting DH more or less. But he's had spurts, especially that home run. I think I'll Clay Holmes in Yankee Stadium last year. I think it was Clay Holmes, or it might have been Luke Weaver. I don't. Let's say Clay Holmes because he was giving up a lot of home runs last
It
year.
was probably Clay because yeah,
Yeah. but but yeah, so like he's had his moments. So like I said, I can't shut on him too much. But I also have to be honest in saying I would have traded him for Nolan Arenado for with the quickness. But
ooh, I don't know if I would have done that.
I mean,
I only say that because I don't know if I would have done it if it was like it was either here Bregman and now that you have I would rather have Bregman than Arenado. I guess if you got both and you just move Bregman to second and Devers to DH, that's fine too. But
yeah, it would have sorted itself out. Um, and before talking about Bregman, it seems like they made a point to make the pitching better. Because what was the thing that kept the Red Sox out of the being true postseason contention is that the pitching just started falling off because um, the rotation, obviously, guys like Cutter Crawford, I mentioned Houck already. Bayo, he was like had some moments, but he was like shaky throughout most of the season. Bringing in Andrew Bailey to be the pitching coach kind of did wonders for some of these guys. But then, of course, second half of the season, Carter Crawford, horrible. Turner Houck was shaky. But mainly the bullpen. The bullpen, Bernardino was out there every day. Chris Martin, even though he was nasty the year before, they putting him out there every day.
Martin
Kenley
was good,
Jansen.
but he's
I love
also
Chris Martin.
70 years old.
Right. So it was the idea. It's like but then look at the difference now, bringing in like more established names as well as just depth in that bullpen. So they're not trotting out like the same three or four relievers. what's his name? Is it No, it's not Justin Slayton. It's oh my God, what's his name? I cannot
Justin
believe.
Wilson.
No, 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 no. It was okay. I'll since I'm trying to think. He gave up. I think is it Zach Kelly? Judge hit like two bombs off him in like back-to-back days last year.
Oh yeah, I remember who you're talking about. I don't.
I think it's his last name's Kelly. I think it's Zach
Yeah,
Kelly, but like having just kind of not necessarily no names, but just guys who probably have no business pitching in high leverage situations sometimes. So allowing them to kind of build up and have more protection in the bullpen. So like right now they're kind of without in a like the full-fledged closer. Like it seems like Chapman and Hendricks. Even though both have kind of been like they've been all right. I think Hendricks hasn't been doing so hot during spring training, but that I feel like that's expected, especially someone who hasn't been able to pitch in a matter of year and a half. But yeah, the pitching side, big upgrades. I love Walker Bueller coming in, Giolito coming up. It seems like they're gonna be working with a 6-man rotation. I think Cutter Crawford's going on the IL, so the pitching side looks promising. And to your point, if everything goes right, or like a bunch of these guys can be, or they can get guys who can be on workhorse. They have like two potential workhorses in Giolito and Bueller, and then the bullpen looks better. It's just a matter of seeing it put in practice. Like on paper, it looks great.
yeah.
Yeah, bringing in Alex Bregman, even if it was believed besides Narvaez, but obviously bringing in Bregman is a lot bigger than bringing like kind of like supplementary pieces. But Bregman coming in, obviously it was like the dispute with Devers about I don't want to move off third base. If it was up to me, I was like, get the fuck off of third base. But
Uh,
um
Yeah, I think he'll move off third. If we're being
at
honest.
some point,
Yeah,
at
I
some
think
point.
I think by opening day, like to me, based on how it was reported about how when they approached him and whatnot, it's not super surprising that he had that response. But I think if you give it another month, which is would be opening day, from when that was recorded, I think he'll be fine moving off third. In all honesty, but
Right. I just think it's more the fact that I would much rather him be a DH, of course, yeah. But also
hundred
it's just
percent.
more worried about some like I guess it's different because I'm thinking of Byron Buxton, for instance. The Twins wanted him to DH a lot more, and he said he hated it, and it
Yeah,
didn't help his production. But I think the difference is Byron Buxton. It was more injuries. He's a great, tremendous outfielder, and obviously we'll talk more about the Twins at a later date. But so I guess in this situation with Devers, I think the fact that he can just focus on hitting could do him a lot more wonders, and he doesn't feel the need to have to play every day as well because down the stretch last year, like obviously he was dealing, I believe, with like a shoulder injury or something, but
two. I think both of them, right? Or was it just one shoulder?
something like that. All I know is it affected his swing, and he just wasn't himself down the stretch when they needed him, and then like they just did not like sit him down or nothing like that. They just kind of let him keep playing with the injury, and it didn't work out well for anyone. So but bringing in Bregman, like I said, or like you said before, establishes leadership, kind of makes better suits the hierarchy
Yeah,
of the personnel there. Devers is more of a quiet type. Bregman is going to be more of like, hey, I'm a proven winner. I'm a champion. Obviously, one of them with asterisks, but obviously
yeah,
a winner nonetheless.
yeah,
Obviously, being a multiple-time World Series champion. But like he knows what it takes to get to the big time. He's a big time player, so it's great to have him, even if it's just like I said, like I think the thing is people were too hung up on the fact that he signed for 3 years. Like the thing I'm looking at is the player options.
yeah,
It's like say he pops off and says, "Oh, I want to go back into free agency," and then try to lock him for a big contract, and
yeah,
it leads to a lot more credence of how the Red Sox can build themselves over the course of the next few years. But and I haven't even talked about the young guys like Roman Anthony and Mayer and Campbell, like we've spoken about. It's like
petrifying from my perspective. I'm I'm terrified.
so like I just
Genuinely.
think we'll see those guys up and on the major league roster within the next year. Obviously, I think all three of them will probably be called up
Yeah,
around all at the same time this season. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of things that you have to look at. It's like the Red Sox look great on paper, but then there's still a lot of questions that I have. Like, can Trevor Story stay healthy for a season?
yeah,
Can Tristan Casas stay healthy? Like he had that one great season when he his first full season in with the Red Sox, and then he hasn't had played a full season since. But to be fair, he's only around 25. He's 24, 25. So yeah, like I think the Red Sox, they're the biggest out of all the teams we've listed in terms of the wins. Like I'm taking the over, absolutely. Like I think they like
Yeah, no, no
them
question.
being the third best team in the American League East. No, I think the Red Sox and the Yankees are going to be punching each other in the mouth over the course of the summertime. So,
We'll get to
um,
that team in
yeah,
a little bit.
and I'm pulling full disrespect towards the Orioles. So, um, yeah, so the Red Sox they have a lot of they have did a lot of things right this offseason, but I just don't want to just have it be one diamond in
Yeah,
the pile of shit that's been Red Sox off seasons the last couple of seasons. So hopefully this is the start of something new
yeah,
and they can build off of this. But I don't like I can thoroughly believe the Red Sox can be a major player in how this in the 2025 MLB season. So a lot of things going right for them, and yeah, it's gonna be fun. I haven't had this much excitement being a Red Sox fan the last couple of years, so yeah, I'm excited.
yeah. I don't blame you.
I was gonna say I'm not sure how much more you want to be talking about the
We
Red
can move
Sox.
on to Baltimore. This should be quick. Um, Orioles, man, like the biggest story of their offseason was moving the wall in left field.
Should have
Uh,
changed it in the first place, but
correct. That's correct. I mean, there's still pieces on this team that I like. Like, I think Gunner's probably one of the best shortstops in the entire league.
would you say the
Um,
best?
he might be the best. I mean, no, Bobby Wood I think's better, but
Yeah, that's true. I can't believe I forgot about Bobby Wood.
yeah.
I'm
I
sorry.
think it's still one of the best. Adley, Adley's fine. Like he's probably the best catcher in baseball, so maybe I'm underrating him a bit. But like, I think he had a little bit of a down year last year. One guy I'm very high on, just from like, I think this guy can be a real player for a full season. Like Jordan Westbrook. Like I think Jordan Westbrook is like a legit talent, a legit power bat. I know Jackson Holiday last year was very underwhelming. I know Ryan Mountcastle was underwhelming. He was someone who benefited a lot, I think, from the wall. Now that they're moving it in, I think he could have like 25 to 30 home run potential if he stays healthy for a full season. Obviously, they got Tyler O'Neill. Um, his biggest issue has just also been health. Like he just hasn't really stayed healthy, I feel like, all that much. Um, the thing that I worry about them the most is the pitching. And that's where I'm a little bit lower on them. Like they lose Corbin Burns in the offseason. Grayson Rodriguez, I think he's now going to start the season on the injured list. Like that's not a good sign. I want to say it was like an arm or shoulder or something, like something that's like a yellowish flag for them. Zach Eflin's going to be their opening day starter, which I don't know how I feel about that. Charlie Morton is still playing baseball. He's going to be their second guy. He's 41 years old. Like that's not something I feel great about if I'm Baltimore. Like Dean Kramer's okay. I don't think Povich is very good. We don't really know much about Sagano because this is his first season. At least they get Felix Bautista back, but they just need to find a way to get to to actually get to him. Obviously, I think they can put runs on the board, and they still have young talent in that lineup. It's just a matter of like, will the pitching hold up? That's really my biggest concern. Sir Anthony Dominguez is gross, in a good way. Uh, Cano, Aiken, Soda, like they have dudes in the bullpen. It's just like, can you get enough good innings out of Eflin, Morton, Kramer with Grayson out? I don't know. I don't love this team. I just or I don't love the prospects of this team. Like what's their over under?
They're over under from my it said 87 and a half.
See, that feels right. I'd probably have them at like 86, 87 wins. Like I don't we're not far from removed from them winning like what 100 games, but I just don't think the pitching staff will be able to hold up. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe their offense just explodes to being one of the best units. That's not off the table with Gunner, with Adley, with Westbrook, with Kauser, with O'Neill. Like they have a lot of power. They have a lot of youth in that lineup, but it's just a matter of like, can their pitching hold up? Maybe Jackson Holiday is one of the best prospects after having a really bad first impression last year. Like maybe he's just one of the best middle infielders in the American League or in the AL East at least. Like that's not off the table, but I don't love this pitching staff at all. Or at least in the rotation, I just don't love the rotation. That's what's holding me back. Maybe I'm just completely off base with it.
I don't say there's I'd say you should make a lot of good points. I think there's a good case to be had with with the Orioles in terms of still being a solid team. I think yeah, they're not the same 100 win team like before. I think um just going over some of the players you mentioned, like Adley Rutschman, like tremendous defensive catcher, and obviously he was one of the like diamond level prospects coming into the Orioles organization and getting called up. And obviously it's been a couple years now. I don't know if it might just be me or it might be some truth to this, but he cannot hit right-handed pitching. Like when he bats from the right side, he can be great, but from the left side, dog shit. But um, or it might be the other way around. I just know from one side of the plate, he
I can
struggles a
look up
lot
his
more.
splits really quick.
But getting going back to him in a second, Gunnar Henderson, one of the superstar of that team,
So
and
good.
need to lock him up like Bobby Witt Jr. like esque contract. Maybe not the same amount of money, but just something, you know. But yeah, he's definitely the superstar of that team. Colton Cowser, obviously, I believe he won Rookie of the Year last year, if I remember correctly. But
Healed it.
um, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, but I think then he was a finalist for sure. And he's the reason why the Orioles were okay with losing Santander because they're just going to slide him to right field. He was like overall last season very good. Bringing Tyler O'Neill to kind of supplement that power and have him take over left field. Um, real big for them. Not really not losing all too much, but they didn't add a whole lot either. Losing Corbin Burns obviously is the biggest thing. Um, but at the same time, it's like I don't care how good this Baltimore Orioles team is. Like this team hasn't really shown me enough to take them seriously, especially getting in the postseason. Do I think they can make the playoffs? Absolutely. But do I
Yeah.
think they're going to make a whole lot of noise? Absolutely not. And the last couple of seasons, where I state my case, it's like they haven't won a postseason game in years. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't even remember how long. I can't even give you an exact number. And there was times that like while they were one of the best offenses in the league and they got shut down. Like when the Rangers faced them a couple years ago, again, they were one of the top offenses in the league and got shut down. And this is like even while like Gunnar Henderson and guys like that were coming up. They could barely get runs across. And like I said, they could be a great regular season team. Maybe we're kind of underestimating them a little bit. Maybe. But at the same time, I'm looking at this Baltimore Orioles team and it's like they haven't improved. They're more just banking on the homegrown talent to kind of keep carrying them forward. But there has to come a time when you're gonna like they're under new ownership too. There has to come a time when you're actually going and shelling out money to bring in other pieces or kind of maintain some of your superstar level players to have foundational pieces to build around. And just in the context of this season, I don't see them being better than the Red Sox. I don't even see them being better than the Yankees, even though they lost Soto. Like the Yankees done a far better job in terms of supplementing their personnel, while the Orioles just kind of just standed pat. So
Didn't
I
the
think
Orioles, sorry to interrupt, but like didn't hasn't their owner like come out in the past, maybe not this most recent offseason, but in previous offseason, they're like, yeah, we're gonna spend money, but they haven't.
I think I
Maybe I'm
so
wrong.
from
I
my
don't want to put words in
recollection,
other people's mouths, but like I feel like that happened.
yeah, from my recollection, the new ownership group that bought the Orioles, they traded for Corbin Burns and said, "Yeah, we're trying to build a
Yeah,
contender here," and that sort of thing. It may not have been verbatim what was being said, but more or less it was, we want to go out and get the best talent and get the best product in the field, and just judging it from that statement, they have failed to do that in terms
right.
of trying to get the absolute best product in the field. Obviously, you have great players, Cowser and Henderson to be name a couple, as well as Rutschman, who can kind of hopefully um, get himself back to being looked at as that superstar that people were hyping him up to be. And yeah, like, but I just find it real hard for them. It's going to be an uphill battle for them to try to like fight off the Red Sox and the Yankees for trying to be the kings of the AL East. So I think them finishing in third place for me would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
but I can easily look at that and see three AL East teams making the playoffs all together. So, but yeah, I'm not as high as maybe a lot of people are in Baltimore. I think Gunnar Henderson's still going to have a fantastic season, and guess we'll see what things fall. But to your point, yeah, that pitching staff might be like the first big pillar to kind of really like crumble this whole 2025 season for the Orioles.
They traded for Trevor Rogers and they traded like two top 5 prospects or two top 10 prospects or something like that. And that just has not worked. They had Jack Flaherty in their building not too long ago, and that just did not work. Like, to some extent, it's not just a lack of trying. I just don't think they're outside of Corbin. I don't know if they're targeting the right guys. Maybe I'm just off base by saying that. I did pull up Adley's splits real quick. This is just for his career. He is better from the left side than the right side. 253 with a 755 OPS from the right side. A much smaller sample from the left side, but 283 with an 818 OPS. I know he was those. It was much more drastic last year, where he was much worse hitting on the right side, hitting on the left side of the plate, even though he had more home runs versus right-hand players or right-hand pitchers. But he was just more consistent from the left-handed side or from the right-handed side. I keep mixing it up. Um, but yeah,
So I think
just to
it's
give you
just
some
more.
additional context.
Yeah, it's just that's the thing with left or switch hitters because obviously Cedric Mullins, he was a switch hitter before the
Yeah.
2021 season or 22 season, whatever season where he had I think that 30-30 season. Was it 30? Yeah, I think it was 30-30, but he was a switch hitter before that, and then he strictly hit from the left side, and he had himself his best season of his career. So I'm not saying Adley needs to do that, but maybe there may come a point where he may just want to focus from one side of the play. But again, that would just be an insult to kind of his talent level because I know that's a lot of things people give him praise for. Is just like on a base level how good he is as a baseball player. So it's just more hoping to see that more in practice and kind of him take that step forward. Um, because yeah, like even as he is right now, you can argue he's one of the best catchers in the game. Me personally, I don't think he's. I think he's maybe top five, top three. But obviously, that guy in Milwaukee, I would look at as being the best catcher in the game. But
He's one of them. Yeah.
yeah. So it's but yeah, I think he's kind of like I compare him to Patrick Bailey in San Francisco, but obviously I think he has a far better bat than Patrick Bailey. But yeah, I think that's another thing they got to check off is get Adley right and have him kind of be up to take that step forward to get a little bit closer to Gunner because Gunner just soared past him in terms of not necessarily talent but production level. So yeah, that's for me on Baltimore.
Yeah.
All right. Last but certainly not least, we're talking about Matt's New York Yankees. So, Matt, obviously, the Yankees coming off of a World Series appearance, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, Yankees could not get the job done. And the big talking point at first was losing Juan Soto. And yeah, and the Yankees proceeded to make a lot of moves and I'm saying reactionary not as an insult or for it to be negative, but they responded. I think as any fan would love for the team respond if they lost a generational player by getting talent to supplement that loss as much as they could, signing Max Fried, Bellinger, Goldschmidt, and pretty much trying to still kind of put themselves in that position to still be one of, if not the best team in the American League East. So I will allow you to elaborate a little bit more on your New York Yankees.
I think the part where I want to like losing Juan Soto sucks. It like top one worst experience as a fan losing a guy like Juan Soto. Um, Depending on who you are, you could look at adding Cody Goldschmidt, Freed. They traded for Devin Williams, who's cool. Like you could look at that as like a positive, and I think to some extent that is a positive. Like there are two sides of my brain where it's like one, it's not like they sat on their hand. Like there's still base level production that each of these guys can bring that can help a team over a full season, and like I think they're better defensively, which was like a huge problem last year. I think that's like a plus. Is obviously anyone who watched, Game 5 of the World Series and saw that fifth inning, Yeah, they were going to address that in the offseason because I, Jesus Christ. Um, but I don't think I'm lower on this team because I don't think it was enough. And it's hard for me. Like, I was someone who was anti getting Cody Bellinger. I don't think I'm as strong as I was then as I am now. But at the same time, it's like I look at the lineup. There's one impact guy in that lineup, and his name's Aaron Judge. And no one's going to care what Aaron Judge does this year in the regular season because he didn't do it in October last year. Whether that's fair or unfair, no one's going to care. There's no other guy in that lineup that I'm like, that's an impact guy. Cody Bellinger's not an impact bat in the lineup. Paul Goldschmidt at this stage of his career is not an impact bat in the lineup. Could he help? Could those two guys help? 100%. Sure. Jazz was quite good last year. I want to see it for a full season, and I want to see him healthy for a full season for me to believe it. The only other guy that I can get excited about, and he's the guy I've been most excited about this entire season, is Jason Dominguez. That's it. That's the only other person where I'm like, dude, this guy's gonna be sick. Like, hopefully he's healthy for a full season, unlike he was last year. Um, but we saw like very small remnants of what he could be in 23 when he came up before he got hurt and had to go undergo Tommy John, or at least I think it was Tommy John. But like when you have a guy like Aaron Judge in the lineup, and when you, I don't think offenses was like a huge problem, but like there were just plenty of instances where they just couldn't score enough runs. Like Volpe's been disappointing at the plate. I know he wasn't great. I mean, he was actually not great, but like he was pretty good in the minors. He hasn't been an impact bat at all whatsoever his first 2 years. Ben Rice I liked, but like the split, if you just look at the slash line, like it wasn't good outside of him facing the Red Sox. Like that's literally the only team that he was actually like good against last year. Um, which I guess depending on how you look at it, it's a good thing. He's a Red Sox killer. Awesome. But like
Yeah.
do that against other teams, please. Um,
Massachusetts native too.
yeah. Obviously Giancarlo Stanton's hurt. He I don't know how this happens, but like injured both of his elbows. I mean, he generates so much power and torque in his swing, so maybe there's something to do with that at this stage of his career. Like he's just getting older and whatnot. He hasn't stayed on the field as much people liked, even though he was so awesome last year in October. Like everyone's gonna love him for that, rightfully so. I love him for it. But it sucks that again he's the only other like somewhat impact bat that like when he's right really makes a difference. And it's just like I don't know. Maybe I'm just not giving some of these guys enough credit. Like Wells was really good last year from June until August, and I know he kind of tailed off toward the end of the season. Like he was someone who was getting on base all the time. He makes good contact. Like I think that was my one knock with Bellinger, which I was someone who wanted Seiya Suzuki. If I wanted anyone from Chicago, I was very open about that. But I understand the concerns about Seiya defensively, and it's just like, okay, you're trying to eliminate that as much as possible, and like that's perfectly viable in retrospect. Like Cody's a lot more positional versatile. He's much better defensively in center, and at first he can move around the outfield to any of the two corners if you need him to on any given day. But he hasn't hit the ball hard since pre-COVID. Like that's just the reality of the situation. He hasn't hit the ball hard, so it's like that worries me in the middle of the lineup. Goldie has been someone who's been on the decline for 2 years. And it's just like he's in a much more hitter friendly environment. Maybe he breaks out for a little bit, but that's just not something I'm going to rely upon, or that's not something I'm going to expect. Like there's just too many questions in this lineup, and then I don't think I'm as high on this rotation as many others are, especially if Garrett Cole, who it was reported yesterday that he's dealing with the sore elbow, which is always good news for pitchers. Um, I'm just not super high on this rotation either. Like I think Marcus Stroman will benefit better from having an actual defense behind him. Same thing with Clark. I still don't trust Rodon at all. Like every time Rodon steps on the mound, like it's like I wasn't as low on him as some others at the network uh when he signed, but At the time, I was like, that's a lot of money and that's a lot of years for a guy who's been a two pitch pitcher his whole life. And fly ball pitcher, that ball carries when he like it. That's just he's not someone. Yeah, he's just not someone who fits Yankee Stadium all that well, even though he's pitching from the left hand side. That's where it's just like there are times where he looks great and he's generating a lot of whiffs and this, that, and the other. But there's other times where it's just it falls apart like really quick. It's just like, oh geez. And he's your number two now. Like Max Fried. I love Max. He's probably the second guy I'm most excited about. He's been someone who I've long admired when he was in Atlanta. Not someone who's going to generate a lot of swing and miss stuff, but he has so many different. He has like 6 or 7 different pitches that he can go to at any point in the count and get strikes. Like that's something that matters. But now that he's your one, I like it. That he's their one without much depth behind it, and that's the part that concerns me. But so I will say I'm very high on Will Warren from what he's shown in spring. I know it's spring training, it's a small sample, but he's been really good against MLB caliber hitters. Their bullpen, I think, is solid. Um, but again, like you need to find a way to get to that. I don't know if they have the lineup outside of Judge. I don't know if they have the rotation to get to Devin Williams as much as they would like to get to Luke Weaver as much as they would like to. I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm just not high on the overall scope of this team as some others are, just because it's like you lose the guy who is the most impactful player on your team outside of Aaron Judge. But the most like you really lose two of the guys who is most impactful if Giancarlo's out for a prolonged period of time. And it's just like I don't know if they did enough. They did enough to replace the defense. They did enough. They leaned into run prevention. That was something they did. But at the same time, you need to score enough runs to win games. I look at this lineup, and as of right now, again, I could be so wrong on this by you know June, July, August. I could be unbelievably wrong. I look at the lineup, and I'm just like, I don't know if that's enough. I just don't. There's too many flaws. There's too many things that I question my head. Like unless Dominguez pops off, unless Volpe has a breakout season, unless Jazz continues to do what he did in the second half of last year, if Oswaldo can do stuff at the end of that lineup, if he's going to be starting at third, if Ben Rice can figure it out just a little bit, if Austin Wells can have a consistently good season despite playing catcher for 130, 140 games a season, which is very taxing on your body. If Cody can, if that swing is tailored for Yankee Stadium as many believe it is to be, he can be someone who breaks out, or at least has a better season. I mean, he not that he was bad in last year, but he was a league average bat. 2 years ago, he was
Return to form. Yeah.
yeah, like 2 years ago he was much better. But like if he can do something closer to that for a full season, awesome. If Goldschmidt can look like he did in 22, which I don't think is ever going to be the case again, cool. But like that's a lot of ifs, man. That's a lot of ifs outside of Aaron. And that's Aaron Judge, who's going to be 33 years old soon. Like, there's, I don't know. I just have too many questions about this team for me to just be fully excited, especially after losing a guy who you thought would be with your franchise for the next dozen plus years. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too much of a Debbie Downer. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't blame you for feeling that way, especially obviously you lose a top player in the game. I feel like anybody in that situation would kind of like it would feel the same way in some regard. Like even if you got a bunch of the players that like you actually wanted to get in free agency, outside of that, you probably still be like, oh, but we still. It's kind of like the same thing when the Red Sox
Yeah.
lost Mookie Betts. It's like, you lost Mookie, like, oh yeah, you got some pieces, or like say like the Red Sox actually did a lot better in terms of a pivot trading Mookie Betts. I still would have been like, I probably still would have been nice to have Mookie after all,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Um,
They got more athletic. They got better defensively. That's been something that's been a problem. But not that there was too much of an overcorrection, but I just don't know if they have it. I don't think they have enough firepower unless, again, there are multiple breakouts. And you have your rotation, which is already falling apart with Heel, with Garrett. Like, If they're able to stay healthy and you're able to add someone at the deadline, like I don't know. It to me again, there's just too much ifs. Not a
I
bad
feel
team, but they're not like
nah.
they're not someone who I look at as like I they're a surefire contender. I just don't see it that way right now.
I still think they're good enough to make the dance. I still think they're good enough to make the postseason. Uh, I think some players I would want to keep an eye on, and I honestly think one person I would bring up is Oswaldo Cabrera. I think he has been such a start-stop player in terms of consistent playing time. Like if they would just give him in position to play every day to see what he would be for the course of a full season, I think that could do wonders for them. Say like putting him at third base, even though Jazz was really good at third base, um, from what I saw in the games that he played. Signing him over to second, which I feel like was more his natural position anyway, and putting Cabrera at third, and just seeing because like that's a because at worst you have a switch hitting threat playing third base who can provide you pretty good defense, and you will figure out what you have with his bat. But I think he's just someone who's been playing all over the place. I look at him more as somebody who should have a solidified position, especially after the couple years that he's been with the team now. Because like obviously guys like LeMahieu and others like they're getting old or they just suck now or both.
It,
Uh,
for LeMahieu's case, is both.
yeah, yeah.
But no, I'm with you with Oswaldo. I like Oswaldo. It's just that like, yeah, it's just not consistent enough with the bat. But being in a being knowing where you're going to be every day would matter. But
I feel it would help.
um, yeah, it would help. Not to say that I wouldn't be opposed to them getting another bat, specifically one who can play third, but it just depends on who that guy is. Like when Oswaldo's right, he sees the ball well. He hits hard, especially um, when he's batting from the left side. Like I think that will matter, at least the bottom of the lineup.
I would say outside of that, it's like I like Bellinger a lot more obviously than Goldschmidt. I think Goldschmidt's going to kind of provide the kind of the same positioning as Rizzo when he first got there. It's like he's surrounded by a lot of like obviously he's that aging vet and he's surrounded by a lot of guys. So like he's more in terms of a role player. So anything you get out of him is gonna be good.
I'm
Um,
only looking for like 800 OPS, Paul. Like I'm not asking for a lot.
give me
Their first baseman, like if I'm being again, there's two sides of my brain when it comes to this team. On the more optimistic side, their first baseman, their first base production was so unbelievably bad last year. Like Paul Goldschmidt was not good last year, and he was still like better than all of those guys that they had combined. Like it was genuinely crazy how bad their first base production was with Rice, with Rizzo, with LeMay. Like it was horrendous last year. And when he's like semi right, Paul Goldschmidt is a league average bat who's a good defender at first base, and that's they didn't have that at all last year, like not even close. And so like that's a good thing that they have him, and he's someone who I respect as like a two strike hitter. He's a guy who has a good approach to all fields. Like that's a good thing. I just don't know how much juice he actually has left. Like it would have been so much sicker if he was just like on the team like 3 years ago. But that's obviously not the reality.
right.
Um, so I understand why, but like just he can just be someone who holds the fort down for 1 year. Awesome, perfect. But I just don't know how much juice he actually has left. That's just
Yeah.
my concern. But like I'm not asking for a whole lot, if that makes sense.
I would say it probably would have been a far better of an upgrade to bring in someone like Christian Walker, but obviously something like that doesn't happen. I know that he was linked to the Yankees. But yeah, like outside of Aaron Judge, it's kind of like looking more depending on how these acquisitions kind of play out, it looks a lot more like I want to say the 2022 Yankees or the 23 Yankees, where it was pretty much Aaron Judge, and it seemed
That
like
was 23.
yeah, it was the Aaron
Yeah.
Judge show, and everybody else was just like you didn't know what you're gonna get from time to time. It's like so that I feel like that's the Yankees in the very worst sense going into the season, but at the very best, I think there's at least a couple of these guys that they brought in that are going to be either solid or go way above expectations. Like I think Cody Bellinger is going to improve. I think he's too good of a player not to, especially in the ballpark he's going to be playing in now. And not really being looked at as, the guy. Obviously with the Cubs, he played like he was the guy at least that first season when he was with them, and I think playing next to someone like Judge, you can either rise to the occasion or you can crumble under the pressure.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously for someone like Juan Soto, it was a lot easier for him because like just I think in terms of talent level and like offensive production. Um, but Bellinger, I think he's probably the biggest person I would say keep an eye on. At least from my point of view, like obviously I think Jazz and Cabrera, like I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
Jason Dominguez, like I'm not gonna touch too much on him because like I feel like you hit the nail right on the head. Like he has like all the potential in the world and
Yeah.
like a switch hitting outfielder, like have him play left field and just worry about just mashing
Well,
and
it
like
for him, it's like that is a problem. Like I think that's the one hole that they have on the team is like, it's been free. They've rotated dudes in and out of left field for so long, ever since Brett Gardner left, retired. Um, but like I could not. People are gonna post the spring training highlights in the field. I could not give less of a fuck what he does in left field during spring training.
did he hit a
Let
home
him
run?
learn right now. Let him get those reps in right now. If he struggles in the field when it's September, okay, maybe I'll be a little bit more concerned. I genuinely do not care at all. He could be sitting on the grass and playing with the grass for all I just want to see him mash. I don't care what he does in left field as a fielder right now. I don't like people. I understand if people are. I genuinely just don't care. Let him learn now. Let him get those reps and get whatever mistakes out now. Let him get those learning experiences and whatnot. If he continues to struggle or whatnot, then I'll be more concerned. And that's like if he continues to struggle deeper into the season. I know left field in Yankee Stadium is harder to play than center field, and so maybe you switch him and Cody at some point if that's really a struggle. But like, I don't want them to do that right now because then you're just saying that he won't ever play left field, and I think that's a problem. So just let him make whatever mistakes that he has to make in the left field in spring and early on in the season, and just live with those warts. Like I it there's a reason why they put him in left field. They want him to be the left fielder for the future. And like if he can show glimpses of it as the season goes on, awesome. If he doesn't, well then we'll have to have a conversation about it and see what options there are. But right now, in March, I just don't care.
It's better for him to learn it now because there'll be a couple if it's not this season, but maybe sometime in the future, is going to be real. People are gonna be really thankful that he got the
Right,
growing
that's my
pains
point.
out
Like
now.
like you don't want to move him off left field now because then you're just saying to yourself that like, okay, he's never gonna we don't have ever have confidence in him playing left field.
You got this guy for the next 15 years
Yeah,
potentially to
yeah, and so it's
play
just
that
like I'd
position.
rather him play left now. Again, if he continues to stink for the next couple of years, then we'll have a conversation about where to move him. But if
Yeah,
he doesn't, if he continues to improve or whatnot, he's athletic enough to improve. It's just a like matter of positioning, taking the proper routes, so on and so forth. But I I just want to see him break because he's the only other guy that I look at like, okay, this could be like a legitimately very impactful player for you for the next however many years at the dish. That's
yeah.
really all I care about right now after losing Juan Soto. Maybe I'm being too short sighted, dumb, whatever, but that's just how it is. Juan Soto
More,
stunk in the field, by the way,
yeah.
and he was a fan favorite. So, not that Jason Dominguez is ever going to be Juan Soto, but like, I just want to see him rake. That's it. It's all I
And
care about for at least now.
I mean that's all you can really hope for like that's something I guess this goes for I guess me with many like prospects, not necessarily outfield or infield prospects, but if you come up into the league and can mash major league pitching, I don't like obviously that's kind of how MLB kind of scouts their talent these days or with all these guys coming up. Can you hit a fastball? Can you crush major league pitching? You can't play your position worth a damn. That's okay. Designated hitter for you, my friend. That sort of thing. So um but yeah, I think the Yankees, on the pitching side too, just to touch on that real quick. Like I think Max Fried is going to be really good for them. Obviously, big ground ball pitcher, kind of keeping like obviously the complete opposite of Rodon, where Mr. Fly Ball, let me see it go 450 feet on his worst day. to Max Fried, who can get himself decent strikeout numbers and be able to kind of keep the game grounded. I guess pun intended. Um, so yeah, I think something that probably could be a little bit of a setback is like the kind of like the little turmoil with Marcus Stroman. Like yeah, it seems like he has opportunity to start, but I think a lot of people probably are banking on him since he's kind of been acting like a little bit of a diva. He like I get it, he's a passionate player, but I think some people probably look up. You have the opportunity. All right, don't have a 6 ERA or whatever, or only pitch 5 games this year.
He was one of the player like he was at the wrong end of a lot of like poor defensive plays last year. And that's just like, when you're a pitcher who pitches to contact and wants the balls in play, like there's always the risk of that happening. But I think with better defense up the middle, uh, Oswaldo at third's not a bad fielder. Again, we talked about Goldschmidt. Like, again, the only concern I have is in left field with Jason. As again, we kind of belabored, but like, I think he'll be better. I don't know how much better, but I think he'll be better. I don't think he'll be bitten by as many like just terrible mistakes that were made. And maybe I'm wrong, but uh, I would rather have him with this defense than last year's, obviously, and that's the same with Max. Like, guys who pitch the contact, there's always the risk of like something terrible happen behind you, and you're getting put in a bad situation because of your defense. And um, so I think he will be better.
Yeah, I think the Yankees are gonna be fine. Like I think obviously the big story of losing Soto, it's like oh the Yankee like obviously objectively losing your best player, it's real hard to say is the team better with the fact that they lost them. Like I guess on paper, not really, because of course it's like I think you would much rather love to have someone like Juan Soto on your team, but at the same time, I think they supplemented or they made the best out of a bad situation, and it's the Yankees. Who's to say that they're not going to go and get a superstar again in the next year or two anyway? So I think it's just one of those low points.
I don't like outside of Soto. There hasn't been many times where they've gotten a superstar like
Well, at the same
this,
time, it's when it's
or at least since Stanton.
so like look at it this way, like before Stan, let's say it was like A-Rod, right? Next
Yeah,
superstar. Like obviously comparing Stan and A-Rod is kind of, you
yeah,
know, no, but the fact is you didn't have to worry about it all that much because A-Rod stayed
yeah,
and he was great.
yeah.
But I'm more talking about it like Soto would have been that next version of that. He was the great player that got traded there and then stayed, and then you wouldn't have to worry. It's just the Yankees just have this way of getting kind of like a franchise icon every couple times throughout like the decades and everything. Obviously like A-Rod, obviously
Yeah.
way back in the day Ruth with the Murderers Row and whatnot. But so I think the Yankees kind of understand the position they're in, and I think just how you felt about the Red Sox from your POV, I can only imagine how Steinbrenner and Cashman are. Um, so
Hey, they loosened the facial hair policy. Is
there you go.
Vladimir
Yep.
Guerrero Jr., Fernando Tatis? Do y'all want to come on down? Come on down to the Bronx, man. Like, come on. I know
But
Guerrero's not. He hates the Yankees more than you do. He probably hates the Yankees more than Trey does. But like, Fernando Tatis, dude, do you want to like? Do you want to
just
come?
cut
Do you
off
want
them
to come
dreads a
sit up
little
in
bit, dude.
pinstripes, man?
Trim up that beard.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah. Listen, man. Y'all can still look cool as hell. Um,
I saw a photo. It was a jersey swap between Tatis with Red Sox and Yankee colors, and obviously it was from a Red Sox based account. So they had Tatis look like $1 million, and then they had him look how Bo Bichette looked in his team day photo. No, he looked like fucking Elmo or some shit, just shaved, dude.
hey,
Oh my
man. Maybe that opens up the door for someone like Fernando
god.
Tatis or something.
Oh my god.
Listen, I'm trying to do my best to recruit.
Oh
Maybe
my
it's not
god.
enough, but it's someone. I need like someone like them to. I need a Guerrero to play for the Yankees before I die. Um,
I I would say the one player that could possibly be next up, and I think it's kind of been like this quiet rumor throughout the media the last maybe couple months at this point after he got traded was Kyle Tucker.
yeah, that'd be fine. I
You're like,
I wouldn't hate
I'm
that,
cool.
but
That's cool.
yeah, uh, sure. He's
I'll
a good
take it.
player.
You know.
Yeah,
Um,
he's one of the best outfielders in the game. It's just
yeah. I will say, after talking about all the AL East teams, would you say, or I guess the better question is, because the main thing that a lot of people will recognize the AL East for being is maybe the toughest division to win in baseball. Would you say that that statement has never like hasn't held true the last few seasons, or because it just feels a little bit different now? I just don't know how true that statement was last year. Um, but I guess I'll ask you: do you think the AL East has always been the toughest division to win, or maybe the last couple of years it kind of hasn't always like lived up to that?
I don't think it's been the toughest. Um, I don't think it's that way now. I mean, I guess
Or I guess most
maybe
competitive. I guess might be the better.
like yeah, maybe you can make an argument for that. Um, Here I'm trying to pull up like all these different divisions just for like a compare and contrast. Like I know the NL East has been another one where it's like that's been like a very competitive division with Atlanta, with the Mets, Phillies. Competitive in a bad way is like the AL Central. Like,
Oh yeah, you got
they're
teams actively not trying to win that division. It seems like.
right, right. You can also say the same to a lesser extent with the NL West, with Arizona always being in the hunt, not really to win the division, but to like to
Be there.
give either San Diego or the Dodgers a fight to win the division. Um, so like maybe I don't think it's that way now, but it just depends on how you feel about some of these other divisions. Like AL West was another one that I didn't mention. Like outside of obviously the A's and the Angel or yeah, the A's and the Angels who bring down the division. They're the anchors of the division. Like it feels like Houston, Seattle, and Texas are always trying to jostle for first. Or I mean, I know Houston's been the division winner forever, but at least there's been some competition. So maybe that's a little bit off base because it feels like they've been the AL West champions for God knows how long. So maybe that's wrong. Um, you probably make the case. I don't know. It just depends on how you feel about the NL East, like how you feel about the Mets or the Braves or the Phillies or the NL Centrals was one, I think, for a little while, not really that much anymore.
Right.
Um, or depends on how you feel about the Diamondbacks. Like, so sure, like you have the Rays, Red Sox, Orioles, and Yankees kind of all vying for it every year. Um, I don't know, maybe like you can maybe make the case that it's still the most competitive. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to
I,
ponder my thoughts about the Central because like it's
I
just
would.
weird, but like Minnesota, Kansas City, or at least Kansas City now, not in recent years. Detroit, maybe they're the most maybe that's the most competitive now for uh just because of like the White Sox, they're out of it, but those other four teams can all win the division. I don't know.
Right. I think
Even though
that
they're all not like it's not as top heavy as the other, you know what I mean?
yeah. I would say the American League East, regardless, is going to be a lot more entertaining. I would say we kind of caught a glimpse of that
Yeah.
the first half of last year when you had potentially the Red Sox, Orioles, and Yankees all potentially are were all in playoff spots at that point. And keep in mind, I think it was I forget how many teams make the postseason now. Is it 12? Is it 12? 12
Yeah.
teams make the post. Yeah. So I mean, but like three teams all from the same division is kind of like Jesus. But um, so and again, that could possibly be the case come October of this year. But anyways, I feel like the American League East is going to be one of the most entertaining divisions to keep your eye on this coming season. Obviously, there's a lot of questions that we threw out about the other divisions. Obviously, the American League Central will be the team or the division we'll be doing next, and we're going to be going through all the other divisions, both American League and National League. leading up to opening day, and yeah, and then kind of keep touching base with the landscape of baseball over the course of the 2025 season. But pretty much that's going to do it for the American League East. And yeah, it was a lot of good discussion and some hot takes here and there, like the Red Sox being the division winner by resident Yankee fan kind of warms my heart a little bit, obviously.
Yeah, it listen, man, sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And the truth
That
hurt
is,
when
man.
the Yankees made the World Series this past season. So you gotta roll with the punches sometimes. But
Yeah.
I'm excited for this season. Matt, I know it's tough losing someone like Juan Soto for the Yankees, but I think you should be excited for your Yankees this upcoming season.
No, no, I'm not excited at all. If I'm being honest, I'm not. Like when you lose someone like that, someone who it was just so much fun to watch day in and day out. And now I have to watch Paul Goldschmidt and Cody. Like it's
I
just not no disrespect to those guys, but it's just not the same. It's
like
just not the same.
excuse me if I'm not jumping for joy.
Yeah, like it. Not that it's all doom and gloom, but like
Right.
I'm just I'm not very excited. That's just
At least you
I
still
don't
have
know,
Aaron Judge.
huh?
At least you still have Aaron Judge.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my god, I didn't realize it was that bad. Actually, well, I
Well,
mean,
it's again, it's more so like you only have him. You
get him some
only
help,
have, and
damn
like he has to stay healthy, or else you're gonna win 80 games like you did 2 years ago.
it.
Like
That's true.
that's how
It's
that's it's closer to that than last year.
it should be at the point where he can still be great, but he has the room
Yeah,
to he doesn't need to be in such tight quarters to where he trips and the team as a whole just crumbles. So
yeah. Like again, that's where I look at one Jason Dominguez. You are my you are my one hope. You are my one hope. But that's neither here nor there.
Jason Dominguez, Hannafin's last resort for the New York Yankees this upcoming season.
For my
But
happiness, Jason
for his
Dominguez ruined
happiness.
my life.
So Jason, don't let him down. Don't let our boy down. But that's gonna do it for the American League East. Again, I feel like it's probably gonna be the most entertaining division to watch in all of baseball this upcoming year. Let us know your thoughts and opinions. Is your favorite team in the American League East? How do you feel about any of the opinions or anything that we talked about over the course of these last over the course of this episode? So let us know how you guys like it. But with all that, that's been Matt Hannafin. I've been Germani DePena. That's been the American League East over unders. Yeah, subscribe to Vedetta Media. Check us out on vedettasportsmedia.com to stay up to date with all your favorite sports. A lot of the good baseball and basketball content. A lot of it posted by this guy right here, Matt Hannafan. So post a lot of great work. So make sure you go check his stuff out, and obviously share this video around with your friends. And if you guys, we're trying to grow something big here, and we'll love to have you guys stick around. But with all that being said, that's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for Matt, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Sweet.